Why not?
Revert to paper if we have to here. Oh, that doesn't work. My phone does my. I'll make a ding noise on this. That's fine. Thank you, everybody. Welcome to the MPO meeting of Wednesday, January 23rd, 2019. We are now in order, and our first order of business is matters from the public. Is there anyone in the public who would like to address us today? Please come forward. Tell us who you are and all about what's up.
Good afternoon, I'm Peter Krebs from Piedmont Environmental Council. Today you will receive the draft of the Thomas Jefferson Area Bike Pedestrian Plan. Years in the making, the plan is a rigorous analysis and makes sound recommendations for Albemarle, Charlottesville, and the university. It also outlines some very specific opportunities for collaboration. The plan is also noteworthy because PC, thanks to a grant from the Charlottesville Area Community Foundation, was able to work with TJPDC to perform extensive community engagement. We worked closely with staff from city, county, and university, and professionals from other fields such as the public health sector, and others who, although don't always participate in the transportation planning process, are very much on the front lines. We held hundreds of meetings and encounters with diverse residents in meeting rooms like this one, but also in art spaces, parks, community centers, playgrounds, businesses, restaurants, and even the streets themselves. More than 300 meetings, gatherings, and celebrations. The report's recommendations reflect and spatialize community desires, and they can be summarized as follows. Number one, people want safe connections for walking and biking that link their neighborhoods to jobs, education, shopping, and opportunities to better their daily lives. They want a regional network that is useful for getting around the area, the heart of which is actually small enough to be viable for bikes and pedestrians. They see this as one community and their lives transcend borders. The transportation network they depend on should do so as well. And that means the city and the county and the university must actively work together to overcome both the natural and artificial barriers that separate communities. The plan maps a course for a connected network that will make it safer for residents to move about, whether that be for recreation or for transportation. This will reduce travel costs, congestion, the needs for roads and parking, pollution, runoff, stress, chronic illness, and on and on. It will improve health, worker productivity, economic growth, air and water quality, while bringing families, neighborhoods, and the entire community together. This is a resilient prosperity that improves individual lives, strengthens community, and fosters investment. I look forward to continuing to grow the coalition and to working with you toward implementation of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address us at this point?
Stay over here. Scared of radiation.
Like fire fall out.
Yeah, actually, it's just real quick, I'm having technical issues, but I'll just say, John Tubbs, Piedmont Environmental Council. So today we're going to talk about smart scale, and we didn't really fare as well as we thought we might. But so that might make discussion about the long-range transportation plan seem a little bit more academic. But to some of the newer members, I just wanted to point out just the importance of this whole exercise. So even though it might seem like funding might be low, and funding is low, this third round was significantly lower than the previous two, and lots of competition for limited dollars. But the importance of planning is that so that when projects do come forward, and there are other projects that maybe go away or there's new pots of money. 5 years ago, the Western Bypass disappeared, and that funding went to the next projects in the long-range transportation plan, helping to unify. So that planning helps unify transportation choices with the land use that we're now seeing in urban Albemarle. And I just want to mention that, so looking at today's long-range transportation plan, I think we're really glad to see the Free Bridge project go to more of a study about capacity that might incorporate some of the other projects. It's on the vision list, I understand, but at the same time, having it there for maybe when groups can help find some new money for that would be great. Because there are always opportunities for new money to be found. Last week I was listening to the Commonwealth Transportation Board, and there was discussion of a $5 million project to address safety on I-64. To sort of get to some of the questions that this body and the Stanton MPO studied a few years ago with that landmark I-64 study. So that project is not coming through Smart Scale, but because this organization has identified what those priorities are, this hidden fund of money that when I talked to Wood earlier, Wood didn't know this money was there. It's still not there, not approved by the CTV, but it's $5 million to address this issue, and it's all because of planning. So thank you for your work, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
That's great. Good job. Love it. Anybody else? Very good. Then we will move on to response to. Anybody have anything to say in response to our comments?
I just, if I may, Madam Chair, that relative to the last speaker's comments, yes, it was unfortunate that we didn't get all the projects that we all worked hard to pull together as good projects, but I will say we got the West Main ask and demonstrated that you keep trying, you finally get what you want. You have to rethink how you're going to do it. We broke it up into phases. It became more feasible because we didn't get that the first go around. So anyway, it was a lesson learned. It does demonstrate though that you've got to be persistent and tenacious, and that the city is very grateful that we did at least get that one project funded, which will mean that the first phase can go and move forward. So, anyway, thanks everyone for the work on that too.
Good. Very good, thank you. Then let us move on to consideration of reviewing and accepting the agenda. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Or a motion to accept the agenda? I don't move that we accept the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. Then let's move on to the meeting minutes from November 28th. Are there corrections, additions, changes, anything else people have to say about the meeting minutes? Or do we have a motion about the meeting minutes?
Do I need to mention that? I submitted just a typo I had found when I read them, but I submitted that to Wood ahead of today, so that may have already been incorporated into what we're approving.
We've made that change on the digital files, the printed files from before that, so a change has been made.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? All right, we have a motion on the minutes.
I move we adopt minutes.
Second.
Thank you. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, that carries, and you need to put this, I should have asked before it carries. All right, now we're on to number 5, which is the 2045 LRTP, and Wood is going to.
Sure. We'll take us away from here. Start with an update on kind of where we are in the process in terms of timeline and steps. We are rapidly transitioning between step 5 and step 6, which is completion of the evaluation, the 3 rounds of evaluation we've done on the roadway and multimodal projects, and work towards develop those final those constrained project lists. So our discussion today is going to focus on kind of the results of the round 3 scenario analysis that was included in your packet, and kind of working around the idea of what a draft constrained list for roadway and multimodal projects could look like. Based on the results of Smart Scale, we have kind of incorporated those into suggestions that we'll be discussing here today, and kind of are thinking how we can move forward from that. Point out that we do have some time allocated later on the agenda for a little bit of a Smart Scale discussion. So we'll probably hold Smart Scale related stuff until then. I'm going to jump in, bring up this slide that I brought up, I think, at all of our past meetings, the various pots of money, forecasted revenues that we're constraining around. So each of these buckets, if you will, we're constraining a list of projects for each of those. The scenario analysis has been focused on that roadway bucket of projects, so that 126.9 million. That's all of the evaluation criteria, the stuff that we've been discussing over these many months. So this was the list that we started off with. These are all the projects that have been evaluated through the scenarios. You'll notice R5 and R19 are scratched off. I've checked my notes, and those are actually visioning list projects at this point, and they've been replaced by that R20 Free Bridge area study. So here's the performance measure matrix, copy of it on the wall, on some of the posters that were presented at the public meeting. But this was the criteria that we used for evaluating those roadway and multimodal projects in the scenario analysis. So a reminder of what has happened over these many months. We started off with round one, which had a grouping of A, B, and C scenarios. The A was
capacity, B was connectivity, and C was multimodal. Yeah.
And then we did round two, which was D and E, which was kind of taking those various buckets and kind of combining to try to work towards, you know, an all-encompassing scenario. Then round three, which is what we discussed, we teed up at our last meeting, and we'll be discussing the results of that analysis with you all here today. Highlighted in green, those are the projects that kind of were advanced into that round three multimodal and roadway project consideration list. We've tried to note the various actions that have been taken throughout this process in that kind of notes column, so really providing kind of that history of activities. You can see that even with a reduced number of projects in scenario F, if we were to try to constrain all of these projects, it would exceed our constrained amount by $153 million. So that means that, you know, we can't constrain because we have more projects on this list right now than we would. So we'll get into discussing maybe some recommendations for how we could whittle that down to an idea of some constrained projects. Here's the same projects displayed spatially, include recommendations that are in each jurisdiction, multi-jurisdictional. Scenario results. Do you want to touch on anything with this?
Yeah, so this is the graphic we've been using for the last number of months to evaluate the different scenarios. And so scenarios A through E were shown last time, so scenario F is the new scenario here. And you can see scenario F performs similarly to scenario D and E in many of the different measures, but some of them you can see a notable decrease. For instance, in congestion, scenario F has less positive impact, and that's primarily because of the changing the free bridge area. There's no longer an actual project being indicated there because we're now indicating a study of that area. So that similarly for network efficiency and vehicle commute time, there is a bit of a decrease there due to that free bridge area change. The other place you'll notice a notable change is the bicycle and pedestrian network. That's just because a few of the projects that were somewhat long bicycle and pedestrian improvements, mainly Rio and 5th Street, Old Lynchburg, that area, I should say in the county, Old Lynchburg, are no longer included in scenario F. So yeah, that's just, you know, as we're decreasing the amount of money that's being included in scenario F compared to scenario B, there's a logical decrease in some of these measures. The next slide includes all the detailed numbers of that, that go into those, bars. But yeah, any questions on that evaluation? So yeah, some of the takeaways, it's very similar to the takeaways when we were showing scenarios D and E. And here, as I just mentioned, scenario F has fewer projects, but we still see many of the same positive impacts that we saw from scenarios D and E. And yeah, similar to before, we have multiple connectivity projects that are showing a positive impact. But slightly less congestion mitigation than some of the larger projects that had been considered earlier, for example, bypass widening, which was included in scenario A, but then we haven't continued forward with. So.
Getting back to that table that provides an overview of all the scenarios and the projects. There we go.
Yeah, and it's almost like that needs to be up all the time.
Yeah, and that's why there's a printed copy
No,
on the
thank you for
station.
doing that.
Well, we're going in the right direction. We've gone from 626 million to 285, so I take that as a
Yes,
yeah.
And if we then take out the things that we know we're not gonna do, then that gets us back to
That gets us there.
compliance.
And that's where we're going with today's story. Any questions before we kind of advance with things? So takeaways. New component, been working with VDOT and Chuck Proctor to get our heads around the some of the other pots that we have to constrain with. One being the bridge list, and this money is specifically for repair and rehabilitation of bridges and structures. We've gotten some preliminary data on kind of the top bridges in terms of poor or fair condition in our region. Working with Chuck to get detailed costs so we can have a better understanding, something that VDOT develops. They have a methodology for evaluating bridges on various parts of the structure in terms of condition. Included here some notes. Blue projects are ones that are already in the 6-year improvement program, so those are kind of ones that we don't really need to think about in terms of the long-range transportation plan. The other bridges are all bridges that were in the 2040 plan. They've already been on the list for a while now, and it's just part of what happens with bridges. I know some of those are, I'm hoping to get some updated data. I know Mr. Proctor's been working with the bridge section over at VDOT to get us the good information that I can't access in the public-facing portal. So essentially, more to come when it comes to bridges. Spatial representation of what you see there. Now jumping back to our roadway projects discussion. This is a first attempt to take the projects from scenario 3 and come up with the math to do some constraining. What you can see here is projects in green are what we kind of played with and are indicating it could be a possible roadway and multimodal constrained project list. For the purposes of constraint, we have broken up the hydraulic project into its component parts. That's not saying which, there's nothing in this that indicates which phase would be done or whatever. It's just really that desktop exercise to get the project amount to be equal to or less than that constrained amount forecast. And the way we've done that is we've incorporated both roadway and intersection funds. So we've taken, for example, we have R3A hydraulic and US 29 intersection. So the work directly at that intersection, the grade separating. In the roadway project bucket, we're constraining 15.9 million of the total of 79.1. The remainder is shifted to the intersection constrained bucket.
Boyd, can I maybe provide some information that will help the MPO policy board when they're considering this? Given the smart scale recommendations and the scoring, and meeting with the leadership for the MPO, we've talked about trying to reconvene the hydraulic panel that worked, Morgan, a year and a half. Ms. Morgan was on that panel, who probably knows the phasing of this better than anyone, and ask them to come back together just to look at the scoring for that year's worth of work that they did and see if they may have some recommendations back to you of this different phasing. What would they recommend perhaps to try to go after first? It's certainly a group that understands this probably better than anybody.
To go along with that, I would assume there are technical reasons why certain elements need to go first. Even if they were all funded, there would be some things that should be done first, just to make the second, third ones work better. I don't know what that order is, but that's Chuck's people, I guess, or somebody to be able to say, according to the engineers, if you do the roundabouts first, does that help the second one?
Exactly.
Or, because I don't know that
Right,
the citizen
and that
has
was-
any of that
no,
information,
that was-
so it's pie in the sky for them.
Well, that was all in the discussions of the panel, because if, like, as you said, the roundabouts were some key elements that you couldn't put the crossing in without the roundabouts. So you either had
That's
to
your answer right there.
put them in first and then do, but then there were, when you did that, then there were other things. And what was a little bit surprising, if there was one project that stood out as a standalone project, it was the turning lanes off of the 250 bypass onto hydraulic.
Right,
It still didn't score well.
right.
So, but we thought it would be advantageous to have that panel, and also a chance for us to show them
Could we see the
the
other
results.
scores on the other projects statewide?
Yes, we've got them all.
Because I know that there were some big monsters out there that kind of sucked all the air out of them.
Which we were warned about, but we were still hoping. Gotta be.
So I just thought that might be helpful to know that we're gonna try to pull those together and get their advice.
So is that a February task and then a March
As
task for
quickly as we
us
can,
to
yes,
talk
as
about
quickly as
again?
we can pull them together. And it won't be, for probably John and those, I don't see the need for, I'm sure the consultants are, the contract's expired and all, but just getting the panel itself together, the opportunity to talk it through.
Chuck has it all.
You can facilitate yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You and Kathy can facilitate it group just fine, it's all right.
And a point of note is that the LRT, the constrained list, while a priority list, does not specify phasing or anything like that for projects. It's just the priority, kind of your top 10 list, if you will.
The issue with hydraulic and the two roundabouts, they work together as a system. You can't have one without the other one. Hydraulic, Hillsdale Extended could be probably done separately, and you could probably do the ramps and make the connection without doing either bridge. You'd have to make some connections, improvements on Holiday, and then ZAM could be a standalone project, and Angus could probably be a standalone project, but you would have to build hydraulic, or Hillsdale extended with the interchange ramps to actually make Angus work,
Right.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
I remember.
And those are some of the things that we have to look at more closely, but that's the gist of the stipulations that we have, the box we have to work in to make things work.
So the complexity level of that one you were just describing, 3B, I remember I only went to a few of the meetings, but they did talk about how that
Yeah,
was
you have to do
the second phase because.
A, C, and D together.
Yes, but B
And
was the
then
one that
B
had a
can
big
go
can of worms involved,
B could go separate.
had to be.
Right.
And
Lots of
then
things needed to be solved
B
in
and E
order for
were-
it to go forward.
B and E could be done
Yeah.
separately. Each one of those is standalone.
And E is the pedestrian bridge over to, that connects
Actually,
the
it's
two
a real-
areas,
Multimodal.
with the bus too, okay.
B is the,
Yeah.
actually the bridge, it's the multimodal bridge across 29 from the west side of Angus to Holiday.
Which is,
And then Zan is the one from,
Zan's what I'm talking about.
Zan's the one from District Avenue that goes across to the roundabout at Hillsdale.
Great, and then the Burkmar extension, is that for the one block between south of Airport Road?
The 11.2.
Yes.
$11 million for a stupid 100 yards, I mean, that's
That
impossible.
is the smart scale number that we received adjusted to 2020 construction year.
That includes the roundabout at Airport Road and the roadway extension from Airport Road down to Beach Street.
Which is still really 100 yards, just so you know.
It's roughly, yeah, it's short. I mean, you've gotta go through that hill, there's a big hill there you gotta cut, you've got constraints, cause you've got a cell tower on it, and you've got the post office on, right on the edge. So, but the roundabout and the issues on making the improvements on Airport Road, and then you're also doing some improvements on Innovation Drive to the north.
The county was funding that separately, that's not included.
No, that was part of that, all was part of that
We've
project.
got $1 million in that bucket of county
Yeah.
money to get that, so that can't
Well,
go
there's
forward now because it's stuck with this?
There's another project that's going north from Innovation Drive all the way to Lewis and Clark. That's a
That's
separate
the one.
project. That's a separate project. This was just for the connection at Airport Road to make the roundabout work, and then the connection to be down with, tying with Burkmarks and then Beach Street.
It was one of those, I was sleeping at the wrong time because everybody in the community thought that the 29 Solutions was going to Airport Road. So this was such a big disappointment when that came out in the small print at the bottom that says, oh, never mind, you can't get there from here. Now, is there a possibility of taking their roundabout as a separate phase and get the road done to Airport Road, which does not have congestion or crossover issues at all for the next 20
You can
years?
phase the projects however,
Maybe,
And then that would
however you want to
cut
see it.
it down.
It's just how you're gonna treat that intersection at Airport Road. We'd have to figure out how to do that.
Right, maybe you could plan for it for someday when it needed, deserved the roundabout, but at least
Well,
to
I
get the
mean,
people
you
to
still have to
get
make
there.
improvements to accommodate that intersection, and it's just whether you wanna do a signal, or whether you wanna do a roundabout, or how you wanna treat that
It's a
intersection.
free crossing, that's all.
So,
Okay, interesting.
And those communities that have regional transportation authorities, they have the taxing authority to raise their own money. And if they have a transportation authority, that's versus a transit authority.
Yes.
And so are they, any sense that they were the ones that got more funding from the
Well,
state?
the Hampton Roads Tunnel, if my memory serves me right, it's about a it got 200 million in smart scale, but it's a $2 billion project.
It's 3.6
They got 200
billion
how
dollars.
many?
They got 200 million from smart scale, but the total cost is in excess of 3 billion
What do they do?
a tunnel.
It's a whole new.
Whole new crossing.
So their regional transportation authorities paying for the rest? Wow.
Or
As long as
or
it's
they
not-
may have had, they may have had older funding.
Are they have
Does it replace?
public-private partnership?
Additional
Yeah.
capacity.
Buy it back.
So that's the scale of this thing.
Oh, yeah,
Wow.
the numbers of that was the roof.
But it is a disaster.
Yeah.
That ate up all of that huge
Wow.
in smart scale all of congestion mitigation. So
Yeah,
because that provided such a huge mitigation congestion, nobody else's, it was just
Even counted, yeah.
yeah, it was just tiny.
And I get it,
Yeah.
bad weather, evacuation, I mean, those people are up the creek if this doesn't happen, so I understand that. Bring back the gas tax, that's all more money to do this, but. Gee, okay, what's next?
So we have Fifth Ridge McIntyre multimodal, we discussed Berkmar, and then we have the two studies, bringing us to a grand total of $124.5 million, which is 2.4 million below our cap, which allows us some flexibility.
And this is the roadway bucket.
Roadway, and so all the projects shown in here made up that third round of analysis. The green ones are the ones that are being included in that total.
and why are we doing this exercise again, just to be on the lookout for other funds?
This is because the federal statutes require that a long-range transportation plan can be constrained based on expected funding projections over the lifetime of that plan. So we have to come up with a constrained list of projects to meet federal requirements, even though Virginia does it completely differently in terms of allocating the majority of project funding.
So our making this constrained list as per federal order, how does that influence state funding? Or does it?
Basically, you have to have your project in the long range plan
We know that,
in order to get the additional, the points for smart scale.
But
Or
this
get
doesn't
federal
do
funding.
anything for smart scale.
Well, this will affect,
Gets us in the door.
yeah,
Oh,
you've
okay.
gotta basically have it in the, if it's in the MPO area, it's gotta be in the long range plan.
Oh, I get that,
Project's
but
gotta be
this
long.
exercise of then winnowing it down,
Doesn't
this
really have as
doesn't
much,
matter.
where it comes in
It's
is
just
the
a federal
federal.
requirement.
It's just a matter of, if you have a project that's not in the constrained list,
Okay.
and it's in the vision list, you're gonna have to basically, if you wanna get it, if you want, not, you can still submit it, but if it gets funded, you're gonna have to put it in the constrained list. So that means you're gonna have to put it in and take something out,
But
that makes sense.
for smart scale, as long as it's in the plan, it's eligible for
It's
an
eligible,
application.
okay.
We'll have to do that other part if it gets funded.
Okay,
Yeah,
so the highway bucket, the roadway bucket is, okay, check the box for now.
for now. For
And
now.
as we pull things out and put other things in, shuffle things around. Now, let me ask one other question, because I can't find the box that gives the details. The Eastern Avenue, does this include the Lincoln Hole Bridge and the crossing for the railroad track?
It now only includes the Lincoln Hole Bridge.
Okay.
Or
Just
the
the
connection
developers-
that's necessary to get from two
The
fifty
developers
to
is the road, we just need those two crossings,
the developer.
just the bridge.
Yeah, that was split up, and at a previous meeting, you requested that be split up, and yeah, that's now what is being reflected,
Okay.
with the cost here and with the project that's being included. Make sense?
Great.
So that covers the roadways bucket, $126.9 million of constrained. The next bucket is intersections, which is $82.3 million for constraint. And to achieve that number, we're recommending the components of the hydraulic 29 area projects. Specifically the ones that are as close to intersections as we can get. So that so we've narrowed down two of them. Next month, we'll be discussing the bridges in more detail when we have numbers and understand costs there. Bridges is $101.7 million for bridge maintenance and reconstruction. And we also have bike and pedestrian at 43.1 million, which is what is going to be coming out of the bike and pedestrian plan. Those are expressly bike and pedestrian related improvements.
And the sizes of those buckets were given to us by somebody higher up the chain?
Those are based on calculations provided by VDOT and adjusted for our performance in previous rounds of Smart Scale.
And other funding sources, so the bicycle and pedestrian bucket looks more at the performance in TAP and Smart Scale, so TAP being a different funding mechanism for bicycle and pedestrian buckets. And then, I don't remember if HSIP was performance based or was that based on what VDOT gave us, but yeah.
So would you said it adjusted for what we previously received from Smart Scale?
Correct.
In what way?
In terms of projects that have been funded in our region,
In total?
in total.
And so that has to come off out of the overall number?
No, that is how we calculated the expected quote unquote revenues.
Got it, okay.
The formula that VDOT provided is it uses a population-based factor and provided us with a significantly smaller estimate of future funding than using the method that we were just discussing, looking at our performance in previous rounds of Smart Scale. And being a competitive program, it's rather hard to predict funding streams and outcomes as we have witnessed based on the preliminary results out of this round of Smart Scale.
But if we needed a match to get something, we could move things among those buckets and not. I mean, this 43, Peter's gonna have a stroke, but $43 million is a lot of bike paths, and so hold it back.
It's a pot of money.
Come on.
Yeah.
It's a pot of money. We split it up. We looked at the groupings in the TIP, which is the Transportation Improvement Plan. It's got different groups. ITS safety is one group, bridge is one group, enhancement is one group, and then you've got roadway projects. We looked at those groups and we basically split this long-range plan up similarly. So I split the pots of money up, and that's where this came from. This is split up similarly to how we get money, how money's split up in the TIP. So that it's consistent amongst all the different modes and different types of projects that we might.
So it's based on real actual past performance in terms of projects getting funded in our MPO area. So the dollar amounts are, reasonable to expect that we could see over the lifetime of the plan, those funding amounts come in.
Okay, that's great. Okay.
I just had thrown this in here in case we needed it, just kind of showing visually what we were talking about with the hydraulic pump.
It's a beautiful plan.
It
Yeah.
It sings really well.
It's so, why wouldn't
want
they
it
fund
now.
it?
It was actually, on a benefit score, overall, the whole thing together was 8. Basically got an 8. Most of the projects.
Yeah, I was gonna say 8 out of 10 or
Well, the
Yeah.
Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel had 74 for the benefit score.
Oh my God.
This is like shifting that
Oh,
curve way.
wow.
But most of the average is probably 4 or less. So
Wow,
we
that
scored
helps.
above the average and above the mean significantly with this project. It's just the cost, once you do the cost division, it dropped it down to where it didn't do as well, so.
Yeah, the statewide average for round 3 was 4.25 project score. In round 2, the statewide average.
That's one.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
The benefit score was 3.3.
3.3 was the average, and we got an 8, this project got an 8.
Okay. So show me one.
Well, there were several that got above 8.
And did those below 8 get funded?
It depends on which district.
See,
Well,
that's-
it's cost
Yes.
too.
The
So-
numbers are one thing,
Some
but then
did.
the push
I
comes
mean,
to shove.
when they go to high priority funds, they look at the benefit score and they go down the list based on top down. So that's the top 3 projects on that list they're funding.
So what was West Main then?
It wasn't on that list.
It wasn't on, it's a different bucket.
Well, it's district grant.
It was district grant. It got funded in district grant money.
Different.
All of our projects that got funded were district grant funded. We didn't get any high priority funding.
Okay.
Next steps for us, evaluate constrained lists as we discussed today, continue discussions on constrained amount, if there's any movement within those bucket sizes. Collect additional project provision list from city and county for February policy board meeting. So making sure that we have all of the priorities from the various entities included in those visioning lists, so they're in the plan, enabling, efficient smart scale applications in the future. Integrate bike and pedestrian plan recommendations. The tier 1 recommendations from the bike and pedestrian plan will be reviewed for the constrained list at 43.1 million. Remaining tier 1 and tier 2 and 3 projects will make up the bike ped visioning list in the long range transportation plan. And Jacob is going to discuss the bike ped plan, and that kind of all makes sense in his discussion.
Yes.
You'll-
Well, thank you.
I can get rid of the laser pointer.
Go for it.
I still miss the little charts with the 5-year amounts and all that stuff in the old days. So we'll get along. Number 6, Jefferson area bike and pedestrian plan.
Okay, so I'm going to start before I provide an overview of the plan itself, just by talking about the review and approval process, so the steps we've already gone through, and what we're providing to you and suggesting. So along with the multi-year process that Peter referenced that has gone into creating this plan, over the past few months, the complete draft of the plan was finished. So you may remember at our last meeting, we showed or included an initial draft of the plan, of the urban section of the plan. So since then, a complete draft of the entire plan was finished. And this was reviewed by city and county staff, so including many of the staff in both the transportation departments and the parks and rec departments who work specifically with bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. We've been meeting with them monthly, and they've reviewed the plan. It was also provided to other stakeholders. So Peter, I believe, referenced the Greenways Advisory Group, which we've had, bringing in a lot of different stakeholders, and so we've received feedback from them and updated the plan accordingly. Similarly, you can see all the posters on the wall from the January 14th public open house. The plan, both in poster form and in paper form, was available there. And then, of course, MPO Tech and CTAC a week ago also provided feedback on the plan, and it is now available online, as you saw in the link provided in your packet. So today, we're looking to receive any comments that you have, and then also over the next few weeks, if you spend more time looking at the plan and have comments to provide to us, we welcome those. And also, we would be able to print a copy of the plan. We don't have any printed versions here, but if that's helpful, let us know and we can make sure to print a copy of the plan for you also. And then we'd be looking to provide an opportunity for the policy board to adopt the plan at next meeting, the February 27th meeting of the policy board. And then I'll note that this will also be going through a similar process with the planning district commission for the rural section of the plan, the rural areas of the plan. So any question on this overall background here? Okay, getting into the plan itself. I'll be going through kind of a similar overview as last time, so feel free to ask any details. We don't plan to bring the plan up and look at every sentence, but yeah, feel free to provide any feedback, comments you would like. So, reminder, the vision of the updated plan is to bring together multiple planning efforts and provide a guide for implementation on a regional scale. So then the plan outline includes section 1, which is an introduction, section 2, which is the urban section of the plan, and section 3, which looks at the rural areas that are part of the planning district region. So starting with section 1, this section provides an overview of the plan and the context of the plan, so that's chapter 1. It also includes information about the benefits of active transportation, so health benefits, economic development benefits, equity benefits, those are all addressed in chapter 2, environmental benefits as well. And then chapter 3 is relevant national trends, which includes bike share, the e-scooters, just the increased desire for bicycle infrastructure and so on. So that's section 1. In section 2, this, as I mentioned, is the urban section of the plan. I'll go through each of these chapters a little bit more detail. So chapter 4 is where we discuss the process and outreach. So this is where, as Peter noted, there's been significant public outreach, and that's documented in this chapter of the plan. And then chapter 5 looks at the existing conditions. So existing bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, and then other relevant data, including population and employment density, and bicycle and pedestrian crashes. Moving on to chapters. Yeah, feel free to stop me at any point.
So in chapter 4 on page 32, under your section issues, the first bullet point, it just says there are a few places where everyone other than the most confident cyclist can ride and feel safe. I'm not a cyclist in the extent of this, so I don't understand exactly what that means.
I think there's a negative missing in that sentence, actually.
So the whole thing is the current bicycle and pedestrian network is not sufficient for most people to use comfortably. There are a few places where everyone other than the most confident cyclist can ride and feel safe. New transportation projects must consider the needs of all users and not create new barriers. I'm just asking for further, so I can understand what that bullet point means. I don't know if that can be provided today or next meeting or whatever. It's just I didn't know if that meant, you know, only expert cyclists can use this, and those of us that are, you know, going out twice a year and trying not to kill ourselves, we don't, you know, so what is it? What are we getting at?
I'm not, yeah, I don't have it pulled up right here, but yeah, I think the general point is that there isn't a complete network so that someone who's not an expert cyclist or someone who's not generally comfortable bicycling can go out and bike around the entire region. So yeah, there might be a word missing there.
So maybe because if I'm cycling every day, I feel more comfortable interacting with car traffic and getting off of an actual path or something like that. Right. Whereas if we're with my kids, I maybe wouldn't feel that way.
Correct. I think it's a critique
That's
of
an
the
existing conditions point.
yeah, it's a critique of the existing conditions.
Well, I understand. I'm just trying to understand what
Yeah,
what the critique is.
Right.
And that's a very good point, because I think it might have become too wordy in trying to say something simple, whereas if we were to rephrase it and say, you know, the current infrastructure falls short in providing a safe and comfortable cycling experience
For the average user.
For the average
Right.
user.
And an example, as we talked about last time, is you show early slow road.
Yeah.
Nobody in their right mind would ride that except somebody who is good at riding on a 1/4-inch wide stuff with a 3-foot drop, because there's nowhere to go. And so I hope that you will consider doing something on these maps to delineate these places that I just really hate to have somebody look at this study and go, oh goody, I can go out here and go out this way to go around A10. I mean, people do it and it's terrifying. But those particular stretches where we have lots of heavy trucking on very narrow roads, I would wish that they would have warning bars or something on the map, so that it sort of is an example of what Ned's speaking about. I think that we have to be, we don't wanna give people assurances that we're not meaning to give them.
Yeah, that's a
this
vision
information.
plan, not
Yeah, this is not telling people where to bike, this is saying, in the future, these are places that we should work to improve, to make it more comfortable for a family to go out and bike, to make it more appealing for somebody to commute to work in something other than a motor vehicle.
That's on
Regional coordination.
the general comment, the same page, the bullet points about there are many gaps in bicycle pedestrian infrastructure. These tend to cluster along the city-county edge, which I know we've discussed the prior meeting. And then the next bullet point says process is of supreme importance. People are energized around issues of mobility and they want to be involved. So I think this would just be a great time for us to call out that we're going to be meeting jointly next week in similar discussion and collaborative efforts as we move forward and work together around projects. And this is a great example of hopefully what we'll be discussing. That if I'm building a bike ped over here and the city's building one over here, that maybe we should get together and maybe build one on the same spot type of thing. So it's just a good point that for those that are interested in the bike ped plan, that then following along the meeting next week between city council and the county, we would be interested in how that proceeds and what comes from it. So I'm just calling that out.
Yeah. And I think one of the focuses for this is that a priority is for those connection points. We actually had a case in the first round of Smart Scale where one jurisdiction applied for funding, and had the other jurisdiction known, they would have probably applied for funding and been awarded so that they would have met, and that's what we're trying to correct here.
Well, and that lets us both jurisdictions be more strategic in our own capital improvement plans.
The road to nowhere.
Yeah, we don't wanna,
Well, it's also just very discontinuous as somebody who's worked on a lot of these issues for a number of years. Our roadways change in width constantly. So what you might be able to accommodate in terms of the bike lane will suddenly disappear. And so it's the stopping and starting that is really challenging, and I think that's the point that Chip is making about trying to make those connections so that you do have longer corridors that are holistically treated.
Thank you.
You have to turn it on and turn it off to stop moving.
I'll add another comment on that too, which is in a couple more slides here. Chapter 8 is about next steps, is about implementation, and something that's very clearly stated there is what you're getting at. City and county staff working together, city and county decision makers working together. So that chapter includes kind of zoomed in areas that show a lot of the different places where the city and county and UVA come together and overlap, and it calls out specific projects where that sort of coordination is particularly necessary. So yeah, that's definitely highlighted in this plan, specifically in chapter 8. And yeah, back to your point, here in chapter 4, it's kind of the different things that came out of the public outreach. So it tends to overlap with, for example, chapter 5, existing conditions. The sentence you indicated there was just kind of a broad statement that the community outreach that was done reveals that most people aren't comfortable riding on the existing infrastructure and that could be improved.
One potential project, while that's warming back up, if you'll remember about 4 years ago, we completed the US Bike Route 76 assessment, which Ann did for Bike Route 76 did exactly what you're talking about. There are pictures of the roadway so that people can use it to determine for themselves, am I the cyclist experience that I should be on this, even though it is a US bicycling route. There are some very dangerous portions of it, and that report pointed those out. That may be something that the city, the county, or jointly may want to pick a route and go to that extent on. This document doesn't go to that detail, but the US Bike Route 76, I think, is a very good example of how that could be done.
So
So would that, in the category of who would do the work? I mean, there are a whole bunch of different suggestions for rerouting through Greenwood to get it off into a safer location. But is that something the county should do on our own and just take care of it on our own, or is that something we should do
I think
this
a partnership,
agency? Because it's,
yeah, I think a partnership on that.
So you're speaking like, if I go to ride my kayak and it'll give me a different class of rapids that I can encounter. Or a hiking trail,
Yeah.
sometimes it'll be like a beginner.
Or ski runs.
Yeah, ski run,
Yeah.
yes.
Black Diamonds,
Yeah,
So your Parks and Rec would identify these bike routes as whatever the scale is, put a gauge of.
well, in some cases though, if it's with US Bike Route 76, it's roadway. And so the Parks and Recs they aren't as involved with that portion of it as perhaps the transportation department would
so
be.
our transportation plan would
Yes.
take care of that.
Okay, so that's chapters 4 and 5. Chapter 6 then are the locality approved plans. So that's including incorporating the important work that has already been done for planning bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, including by the city of Charlottesville, Albemarle County, UVA, and also the MPO. Included a couple of the projects from the last long-range transportation plan in this bicycle and pedestrian plan. So this chapter provides maps with information about the type of infrastructure that's been proposed and what plan the recommendation is from. Any comments on that chapter? Okay, then we move to chapter 7, which is a very key chapter. It includes the regional corridors and the prioritization. So as I've mentioned in previous meetings, the goal of identifying these regional corridors is to focus the plan on a bicycle and pedestrian network that is more regional in nature. So it'd be complemented by bicycle and pedestrian facilities on local streets that are also very important, of course, for ensuring that people can get from where they want to go, where they want to come from, to where they want to go. And this does include on-road infrastructure, so bike lanes primarily, and also a few shared roads on low-speed roads where that could be comfortable to a wide variety of people, and then also a large number of separated paths. So this is the map that is in the plan and that you can see. I guess it's on that side of the screen on the wall. And notably, this is also on our website. The webpage for this plan has an interactive map that includes both the rural recommendations and the urban recommendations. So that's a convenient way to really see this up close. So the plan also puts these regional corridors in context with a couple different maps. So what's shown here is some of the demographic information. So specifically, it's considered a racial dot map, which indicates the race of residents in neighborhoods throughout the region. So when Charles Brown spoke to many of us at an event a few months ago now, he referenced the importance of having this demographic information, this background information in plans of this nature. So this is here to show that various communities are benefiting from the corridors that are proposed.
You can turn off and on racial ethnic groups. Because seeing it all at once, it's hard to tell.
No, I believe in the
For evaluation, yes, we can, but for visualization, yeah, it's.
And this is not on the website. This is just a map that is in the plan document. So I believe it's clearer when you see it. I mean, everything's a little bit harder to see when it's projected on a screen, but let me know if you have any concerns about how it shows up in the plan.
Yeah, it's hard to distinguish, is that is blue and green between white and black, and they all look the same color.
Just would be helpful to see each group.
Yeah, it would be good to distill it.
5 slides.
Yeah.
On top of the composite.
Cause Because you must be able to do that if you had.
Yeah, certainly we could add those pages. It would be increasing the value, or what am I trying to say? Like, yeah, if you think that this is valuable enough information that it should be presented, so that you can really see every.
It is very valuable.
I think it's valuable. I think at one of our previous meetings, someone discussed how it could be misinterpreted or confusing also.
Well, this one is all together, but
They're separate.
if you had, keep every single one of the maps had the destinations, bus stops, and park and ride lots, but then you just had one that had where the black concentrations are, where the white are, where the Asians are, then you begin to see where there could be disparities in access by race, which often aligns with class, not always, but, and that's why I think this would be useful, to be able to distill it. Right now, I can't visually distinguish the racial groups and ethnic groups from one another when they're all at once. On the map.
Okay, I haven't had that issue, which is why I'm pushing back a little bit. I have found kind of all together to be somewhat compelling, and
I'm not saying not
have generally been
that.
able to tell, but we certainly can have multiple maps. Yeah, that's something we can easily do.
Let's have the extra maps and this and send them around to us so we can
Okay.
look for ourselves, because I really can't
Okay.
understand what I'm supposed to get out of that in this format, so maybe when I see them broken out, I'll understand and then we'll be able to.
Because right now it just looks like population density map. It was like the highest concentrations of people are in certain areas.
And I think this information would be helpful for lots of questions, not just like.
It's the bus stops. The bus stops are critical for this kind of social economic analysis.
Yes, and the bus stops and park and rides are presented on a separate map. So yeah, that's also an important piece of this chapter, is indicating how the corridors are a part of the multimodal transportation network. And then we have multiple maps presenting different destinations.
But you get what I'm saying, right? Having the map that has the destinations with the bus stops and park and ride lots, but only then have a map that shows where the white and where the black and everyone else relative to those amenities.
So
We
five different
wanted to
maps
see
that
what
go
the
with this
access
map,
relative to these amenities are by racial group.
Well, the amenities,
Because the destinations are parks and lakes, those are amenities.
You have that interactive map online, is there a way to add more layers to that?
Absolutely. Oh,
That's all we're asking for, is to get the other ones
Yes.
so we can look at it, that's all. Necessarily print them, just
Right, we just wanna see them. And I guess we'll play around with them ourselves, but if it's printed, people will see it.
yes, it's just.
so I don't know if the colors are showing up anymore there, that's not why I pulled this up. But yeah, so here, the next pages showing here are the multiple pages showing destinations. So here are services or health services. And then we have shopping centers, parks, schools, libraries, culture. So, yeah, this is how, we have multiple maps showing all of these things. So I can see how it makes sense to maybe in a similar way to how we have this all split out, to split out the different racial maps. I think it would be a little bit much to combine any of this information.
Well, it'd be great if we could somehow,
Other than online.
online, if we have the capacity to turn on, say, because we have the incidence of food deserts that often align with class and race.
Right.
And if we could turn on that at the grocery stores and race, turn race off and on, then we'd really see that we have an issue with that.
just the struggle cartographically, once we start adding more
Sure,
more dots to a
but if that's
paper map.
something we can do
Just gets clunky.
online,
Absolutely.
okay,
I mean, that's,
so we can print out our own maps.
you can view them online.
There's a, part of the webpage has an interactive map.
It's like a
Okay.
Google
Which
map.
for which you can print the page or look at it.
Great.
I mean, you have an amazing amount of data. I think Kathy is alluding to or trying to get to is that having that analytics of it overlaid based on who's looking at it. I mean, it's a pretty powerful information for a
Great.
variety of different reasons.
Does the interactive map allow you to turn on and off flares?
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's the solution.
That's it.
Although notably, the way it's showing now shows the different corridors by type, kind of like the map that's showing on the wall. So yeah, I mean, you can still turn those on, turn those off, and turn off all the other layers. Yeah, you just like. So TJPDC bike, if you just Google that, it'll come up. Or yeah, our website, town, bike and pedestrian.
Plan.
Yep, here is the interactive map that I was referencing. And as a note, you have to click this side panel to turn on the legend. So here you can see what the legend is. And as we referenced, you can turn off layers. So now we only have the urban showing. So yeah, we can see what we can do to add as many of these layers as possible.
It's really mind-blowing. So that would be.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Then looking at the prioritization of these corridors. So this information is also on that map. If you click on any of the corridors, it will tell you information about the prioritization. And then this is the map that's included in the document. And some of the text there indicates that all of the corridors shown are an important part of the regional network. So all of them should be pursued as opportunities arise. But this does indicate a tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So the tier 1 corridors are the pieces that would have the greatest impact on the regional bicycle and pedestrian network. And as you may recall from our previous meetings, this prioritization was a result of a significant process, including using the active trans priority tool with a number of different factors, and then working with city and county staff, getting feedback on some of the different things they're already working on or different aspects to adjust, and public input from the different ways that we've collected public input to adjust those scores, adjust that tier prioritization. Any questions on that? Okay, I'll move on to chapter 8. This is the last chapter in the urban section of the plan, so the last chapter that I'll be discussing here. And this is the implementation chapter. So there's a lot of information in here about implementing the plan. And as I noted before, one of those key aspects is similar to what's shown on the right here, kind of zooming in on specific areas where the city, county, UVA interact, or where the boundary is, and where coordination is essential for implementing certain projects. So there are a number of pages that show those locations. And then also there are initial cost estimates that were created. So you can see here our $40 million constrained amount for the LRTP won't even cover all of the tier 1 projects. So this, using a VDOT tool, we came up with both low and high estimates because it's hard to estimate any of this until you've done much more engineering work than we've done at this point. So the low, total for all the corridors shown, low estimate is a little over 200 million, and the high estimate is almost $440 million. So this will be a long-term effort. So looking at some of the things that are indicated specifically in this chapter, of course, the localities and everyone involved should continue to seek grants of all types to build bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. Opportunities associated with planned roadway repaving should be used to strike new bike lanes or build other infrastructure. Temporary demonstration projects should also be pursued. Then also continuing to ensure that appropriate bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure is included with roadway projects. Of course, that's something that has been done, and also development projects. And then taking advantage of opportunities to acquire easements, including working with utilities, homeowners association, and other property owners is another important part of implementing this. Yep.
Can I ask about the, so kind of the government capacity that would do these things? So the city has one staff, I think, I don't know what the county, but in a corollary to this fairly sweeping set of really good ideas that do this patchwork approach, right? I mean, it's not like there's an agency that would start to, like DOT that would do this. So is there any advice on that? It was a similar question I raised in connection with the discussion we're having about affordable housing in the city, which is just the staff part of it is like a huge, implementation piece to think about, because these things take a lot of work, and so.
Well, Mike, after you did that, you raised that question, I looked up, and it was only because I was getting some exposure to a particular neighborhood revitalization project that, of all places, Atlanta.
Oh.
And it was the Sweet Auburn and Martin Luther King's neighborhood. So I just went ahead and checked out their planning department. And even though Atlanta is like geographically 20 times our size and 50 times our population.
Right.
They have like 41 or 43 people in their planning department. We have 39. And it was interesting.
Really?
And now everyone's doing something different. But then I looked at what they have for their community planning, which is this kind of stuff. They had like 11 people devoted to it, and development review was 13. And then they had something like 6 or 8 different people in transportation.
Wow.
And we have one in transportation, one kind of in planning, and the rest is development review. So this is a bigger question. It's all about also how the government is structured. It's not only just bodies.
Well, and that's like so interesting.
Yeah, I'll send you what I found.
Yeah, but so on top of that, and all the implications of that, just specifically on bikes for the 2 independent jurisdictions, it would be really helpful to think, like, if we were to step up our game so substantially,
what is the
what would it be? Yeah, because
support for this?
Yeah, I mean, how much, because it's so important. If we could, but you think about just all the work in the city just getting up. I mean, like, everything's coming to Belmont, the Belmont Bridge and West Main, putting protected bike lanes into those is like this multi-year, many.
And it had to be dependent. It was dependent on.
And then also gets built in.
State funding.
Right. I mean, so there's this more creative approach, like you're talking about here.
And I do think that is some of what you will see from what Peter has been working on. The sustainability grant from CACF was for a 2-year period, but it was to help fund to make recommendations to, okay, what can be put into place so that, in this case, the city and county especially, could implement these plans. So I'm sure strategies will be presented as that lines up this summer.
And by the way, alone,
is that, just because I worked with Amanda a lot, because we're working on common issues and we meet every other month to coordinate our projects and the entire team, planning and transportation team at the city. A lot of what she's been doing, I mean, other than these great smart scale projects where we're improving the streetscapes, is that she's tracking the paving, the repaving of roads.
Right.
And looking for opportunities for when there's gonna be repaving to shift language around to create opportunities for ped and mostly for bike, because in most cases we have sidewalks. But that's, to me, when I think about how much has gotten done in the city in the last 5 years, I'm astounded. And a lot of it is just tracking what's going to be implemented already and then taking advantage of that. So,
But she's phenomenal.
she's very good. So that helps, so if for instance, if there's now this overall list and then that can be matched with the paving patterns for both city and county, then the planners that are working on that can make those matches. And it's really helpful to have a list.
And she's been coordinating with Public Works.
Yeah.
But I think Mike's point is still well taken, to do this more quickly. It does need more staff.
Well, I would like, it takes a long time.
Coordination, that's what I'm talking about, like we do, because I mean, like for instance, if you were to have recreation where you want established routes for people to be going through the city and the county, and like some 15-mile loop or something like that, it's challenging to find that right now, like it's not really a biking town in the way that some others are, like where you just do what people are doing, but that would require planning, that would require us to do it together, and so who would be doing that?
And who's meeting with the homeowners associations to get the right of way, to get the connections, and I mean, that's the sort of ongoing thing to do, they're all going to work.
That's right, that's a great point.
And even getting 3 properties takes endless meetings for people to.
Well, Chris Jensen, with all the work he's had to do with getting the easements just for the hiking trail.
That's more for the trails and
bike
than the streets,
Well, because it really is Chris Jensen and Amanda Points together are critical. But they're doing an awful lot for people.
We were really dreamy in the early 2000s when we were thinking about the VDOT plan at the time, that whenever something was restructured, and Garth Road always came to mind, because even way back then, it was treacherous for people. But, when we come back to regrade it and we're putting stone and shoulders and things on, in preparation for paving, then we will take bike lanes everywhere. Well, the cost of things just sort of took care of that. And the fact that there is no extra right of way that they can use is really interesting. Good.
Right of way is probably one of the largest costs in factoring the project is acquisition of right of way.
And that may be the thing that citizens can actually take care of in their homeowner associations. If they could get an agreement, then that's a huge jumpstart to getting rid of these gaps. But it's not always something that a paid staff person has to be doing. Citizen people can be out there beating the bushes and talking to people and trying to figure out if there's consensus about something.
And it's important as we think about this plan to think about what transportation in the future might look like. I think the arrival of the mobility devices such as the scooters and bikes indicate some of the shortcomings that exist in our current infrastructure for serving those alternative modes, for things in terms of paving quality of a roadway, when you have tires that are this big and you have changes in grade that are this big, it doesn't take a physicist to explain what happens when you hit something like that.
And then pedestrian falls in
I've seen congestion on Park Street as all the cars are lined up behind a scooter.
Yeah, a few final things on chapter 8 here, recommendations that are included in the plan. So ensuring that city and county, UBA, and regional planning efforts incorporate the recommendations of this plan. And then, as I believe we got to a little bit earlier, the fact that there could be the need for corridor-specific studies, including additional public outreach for major regional corridors that have been identified in this plan. And then talking about city and county staff efforts, one main thing that is ongoing is creating an online data set of existing and proposed bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure in the region. So we've sometimes referred to this as the One Map initiative, trying to get one map showing both existing and proposed bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure with common definitions and a common understanding of what's being shown on that map and have that publicly available. So that's an effort that's going on with all the staff people who you have just referenced and that we're coordinating. And finally, the Greenways Advisory Committee, which I referenced earlier, having that, it's recommended to have that continue meeting to bring these various stakeholders together. So that's the summary of the plan, unless there are any other comments. The next steps here, again, with you as the policy board and then also the planning district commission reviewing the draft plan and considering adopting it in February and then March for the planning district commission. Aside from that, MPO staff will continue working with Peter and PEC and local staff to ensure that the deliverables, this plan itself and anything else are valuable for encouraging implementation. And finally, very applicable to you all when requested, we would be able to present information about this plan to city and county planning commissions and council board of supervisors as appropriate, as requested by you all, by staff and so on.
Great. So we have to adopt this plan today? I see requires a vote.
Yeah, next one.
Next February.
Correct, yes. So yes, again.
This is the first reading.
Okay.
Right, and you know, if you have additional comments, thanks for the comments here. We can look to make a couple updates, and if you have additional comments,
just reach out.
Yeah,
When this-
reach out to us directly.
When this would come, like what formally would happen when we come to the council? Or was it a report, or would there be any?
I think
It's not coming there's no decision point.
You know, that's up to each individual locality's processes. You could, I believe, previous bike ped plans have been adopted into comprehensive plans by reference.
We're doing, okay, yeah.
So,
Is that Kathy, how's that?
I would think that that's what we would do, we would adopt it in our.
So it's aspirational to say.
But it still means that it has much more on a legal basis.
Right.
If it's part of our comp plan. So that, you know, if someone's doing a redevelopment or a site plan and it's in the way of this, it raises some leverage with the applicant.
Most of the funding programs, they're gonna ask if it's referenced in your comp plan.
Right,
Okay, well,
right.
that's so.
So we need to make sure this gets in front of the planning commission
I
first.
have one other, when we did the MOUs with the new regionalism between the city and the county, did we talk about bikes in them? Because
It might have been in the transportation.
Yeah.
Multimodal was in there.
it's multimodal,
That's
but I don't recall, I mean, it might be worth,
Might be worth
because that really
adding
carried the
that
force of the
on
directive
our
to,
summit,
yeah,
making sure we underscore
I think given how much
that
work has
reference.
gone into this and how
that you raised
detailed
that.
it is, that we could have this be in one of the agendas, in the agenda for an upcoming summit between the city and county, and we could even include this as a directive to our staffs to cooperate and to work together jointly on implementing
I think
this.
that would be very
That
valuable.
might be a good place to present it, isn't it, actually?
I mean, the
So
last.
are we meeting next week?
Right, but that agenda.
That's Jenna's.
Yeah, I would submit this to you for your consideration. Noted.
The
I
next
think this will come
powwow.
up
The next
week,
powwow.
but I think, yeah, certainly bringing it up is something to consider discussing.
We need to get this on our planning commission's agenda. Would you be handling that?
we would coordinate with your staff,
Okay.
because I know, they're very busy right now. A lot of discussions going on, so we'd be looking to important to have staff sponsor that engagement.
Great, thank you.
Very much, that's excellent. Number 7 is the resolution of support to consider for the Long Bridge Rail extension.
This is fairly new to the MPO policy board. While we talked about it, I think at arm's length, but there's been some recent news in the media regarding the Long Bridge, and it's a topic that comes up at almost every transportation meeting that I attend, when somebody, even just before this meeting, asked, what about the Amtrak rail set that was funded as part of the Route 29 project? Where is it? Why isn't it running? One of the main factors of getting that service is finding an available rail slot on the freight rail to run from Lynchburg to DC. And what really makes that very, very difficult is the Long Bridge is at 98% capacity. Every rail car that goes in from Northern Virginia into DC has to cross that Long Bridge, and it's at 98% capacity. There has been initiated an environmental impact statement which should be completed in 2020. And I thought that you as the policy board may want to take a position and recommend to the state and the feds that this project be pursued, and with the recommended project, which is what DRPT is recommending, they, of course, on a project of this size, this is a $1 billion project. They have looked at a number of scenarios, and DRPT's recommended scenario is to build an additional 2-track bridge that will handle both commercial and passenger rail, thereby giving extra capacity to the existing Long Bridge. And I thought that you all may want to support and let both the state and federal agencies know that we support moving that project along. Is that enough information?
Sounds good to me. Any discussion or questions or a motion? We have a proposed draft resolution in our packets, if you were care to look at that.
I move what he said.
Okay. Do we have a second for one?
Second.
All right. Any more discussion? All right, let's have a vote. All in favor?
Aye. Great, thank you for having a resolution in there.
This is great. I'll sign it. Get it out the door. I know 5 years ago, it was the improvements in Union Station that were holding us up, and then once they got that done, now it's become this, so it's like a long way, we just need to get it done. Great.
I like all your data points and your whereas.
It's important. I mean, it's a growing. I mean, I don't think very many people even in Charlottesville know we have 141,000 passengers a year.
32% increase since 2011.
The Roanoke line, which is a year old, has far exceeded all expectations of ridership so far. It's road mode transportation within our area.
Fantastic.
And it won't go anywhere unless the capacity is increased.
Yeah.
It's just, we're completely at the mercy of CSX in that regard. So if you have any other questions or want somebody from our rail team to come and speak to you about it further, we can arrange that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great.
And we are totally in support of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we need to go and march on Washington?
No.
All right, well, before we march on Washington, and talk about the smart scale raster scoring results, Wood, if you want to do that.
Sure, so this was just kind of a little bit of time allotted on the agenda for opportunity to have a discussion about smart scale. I think at this point, everybody has seen the results. We're lucky, the city is very lucky that the West Main Street project did receive funding. I'll just start out by giving a few highlights for there around in terms of this round of Smart Scale. Statewide, there were 433 projects submitted. Out of 433 projects, 98 received funding. The value of that 433 projects submitted was about 700 billion?
7 billion.
7 billion, sorry, added a zero. In the Culpeper district alone, there were 42 projects submitted for 751 million. 4 projects were funded for 20.8 million. Within the MPO, 15 projects were submitted for a value of 470 million. 1 project was funded at $2 million. So that, well, nothing is permanent, nothing is finalized yet, but that's the recommended scenario that's provided.
What is the etiquette to, do you ever go to your CTV and like thank Allison Hunt profusely? Cause she's been a real.
We meet with her, John has correspondence.
That was before.
She walked
Yeah,
with us along
yeah.
there, and I really wanna make sure that she knows how grateful we are that we've got this.
I mean, they were awesome, they came, a couple of them came, walked around with us,
I
almost
forget
made
the
us spend
name,
time.
the man that was, the name of
Greg Yates.
what was it?
Greg Yates.
Yes,
Right,
yes,
Yeah,
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 so,
we
so
took
let,
time to get to know it, and it was, and then you see.
so if you could help us get the contact information so that we can at least write a letter of thanks. I guess there's, but we can wait till it's formally official.
Yeah, it'll be, I mean, it becomes official when they adopt the 6-year plan in June,
Okay,
so.
I really wanna make sure we let them know, because that was above and beyond the Call of Duty, for them to come down and walk the whole street with us.
Getting a good understanding.
Yeah, it was like 2 years ago?
After the last round.
Yeah.
But a good opportunity would be at our spring 6-year improvement plan meeting, because you'll have not only our CTV members, but the commissioner and the secretary, chief deputy commissioner,
So that was something we should just come?
Yeah, they have public comment.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
And that's in Richmond, or is that
It's in Culpeper.
Okay, can you let us know?
We'll let you know, because usually the MPO.
Has it been scheduled yet?
They'll let us know and I'll pass that along.
Okay, thank you.
And John, will they be also having a summer or sometime meeting out here again this year?
Not in Charlottesville. They've already set the schedule. The meetings in the different districts are already set. I think they're in Hampton. I think the next one they go out of.
Did you want to add anything about Smart Scale, Chuck, in terms of scoring? I mean,
The numbers are here, I mean, we're doing some analysis, but overall, if you look, this is just our district that was funded. If you look at some of the other districts, a lot of the projects are really small dollar value that got funded. Some of the projects in some of the other jurisdictions, they were $1 million or less than $2 million. And they might have gotten 6 or 7 projects funded, but they were all that dollar value or less. So I'm not sure what the projects entail, but just looking at the numbers, that seems to be really the big thing on why some of these districts got a lot of projects funded overall. More so than we did, because they were really small projects.
Benchmark got 50 million, so there's.
Yeah, this spreadsheet is online if you haven't already found the page where you can download to see. There's both summary tabs and you can see the scoring for all the projects.
the Stanton district was very successful in
Well,
getting
and this is
small
what
dollar
a prime
projects.
example what I was talking about. Look how many projects are less than $2 million on that list. They have, almost every one of them is less than, what, $3.5 million?
Yeah, nothing's
Most of our projects are, we have like 3 or 4 projects that are less than $3 million out of 42. Most of them are like $6 to $7 million.
Well, we can't help it, we got bigger problems. That's all. Now, totally separate from this, before we wrap up, can you update us on where we are with the exit 118 improvements, the crossovers and all that, as far as timetable? Is that a calendar year 19 that the extra left turn lane and doing away with the circle and all that stuff are happening, or is
I
that?
know they're doing that as a package, design build package, but I'm not sure when it's going to.
It's scheduled to be, the RFQ went out, the 3 firms were shortlisted, so they're working on the RFP. Scheduled to be awarded June of this year.
Okay.
So it'll take some time for them to design. They might get started this year, but it'll probably be next construction season, 2020.
All right, well, thank you. All right, so does that take care of Smart Scale? Did we wrap that one up? Moving on to staff reports, anything on RTP?
The RTP is meeting tomorrow. Meet tomorrow. In this room. We included a copy of the transit ridership report in the packet, so the numbers are available. Answer questions on that. The state is starting to kick off an update to V-Trans, which is the statewide transportation plan. They've started making the rounds and coming to the technical committees and discussing how they're going to be engaging with the MPOs in this process, and there's going to be a lot more to come as they kind of ramp up that process, but they're really making an effort to engage the MPOs early and often, because there was kind of a feeling that the last time around there was one meeting in Lynchburg, wasn't really clear what that meeting was for, and that's where all the kind of ideas got into the plan, and it's kind of it's a key driver in terms of how projects are assessed when it comes to Smart Scale. So it's something that we need to be paying attention to. They've said it's being run by the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment, WIPI, with a lot of assistance from the folks at DRPT and VDOT.
There's a lot of changes. I've sat through a presentation today on it, so there's a lot of changes coming along. There's going to be a lot more interaction with both the MPOs and PDCs to try to get their involvement and get input.
Because I don't know if, I know Chuck was involved with this, but when they were here in the meeting, before the Lynchburg meeting, they were here 6 months or so earlier, and paraded out all of this demographic stuff, and had refused to look at any of the work that we had done locally here in the last 15 years, and they were using national data from some online source about all this stuff, and I said, well, where's the local stuff from all of our highway plans and things? Oh, we didn't look at those. So can somebody please require them to look? I mean, if it's not a consultant, then I'm thrilled, because at least staff people will look at the stuff that they already had. But these consultants just did not do what they were supposed to be doing, I think. And then for to have the next meeting, everything was, all the things were thrown up in the air and new things got put in.
State level consultant.
Yeah. What's wrong with that?
So I'm confident that the process is going to be much better this time around. There's more focus on it. There's some new focuses of what the update to the plan is looking at. One of the topics that they've indicated is going to be a priority is resiliency of our infrastructure. This is very important in some of the coastal plain areas where they're seeing greater recurrent flooding, kind of, it's that, and it's a focus that we're seeing from the feds, which is, fix and maintain what you have before asking for a whole bunch of new toys.
Well, May 29th has educated all of us, even inland, about what 14 inches of rain can do.
Yes,
and the destruction of roadways and bridges that's happened 3 times this season in Puerto Rico County. The same river keeps wiping out everything they do every 3 months. So we definitely need to be working on that, that's for sure. Other staff updates?
The last update I have is monthly meetings through the end of May, which is wrapping up for the plan. There's just a lot of content to get through. Absolutely. In addition to the plan, we have work programs and bike ped. So those are the dates. I put the wrong date for April on the agenda. We've sent out calendar invitations, but I can send those out again, just so everybody has them.
Okay, so the 24th is correct, not 27th.
Yeah, 27th would be Saturday.
Okay. I haven't gotten that far,
Yeah.
but I will go far, okay. Great, thank you.
We'll make sure the website is updated with all of this.
Alright,
That's all I got for updates.
alright, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Anything anybody needs to bring to the agenda for the good of the order here? Or other business, other than our next meeting being the 27th of February? No, don't all jump at once.
No.
Alright, any additional matters from the public, for those of you who have stuck it out this long? Alright, well, thank you very much, I think we got a lot of that today.
Good.
And lots of wonderful work coming to the conclusion of.
Yeah, very
Even
good
though the
job.
results were not so
How are you?
high, we really did a good
Yeah.
job on those things.
It is disappointing, but well, I think the larger story is the mismatch between need and resources.
In our meeting with the Secretary of Transportation 6 months ago, she said, you're up against the big dog here, this is gonna be a really hard year.
Because the competitive process